Okay, now we're ready to install the Lazy Susan. Because of the modifications we've made to this cabinet, we've made it a little bit longer than the normal cabinet for a 36 inch by 36 inch cabinet. I've got some thicker face frames on there that you have to take into account, and although they do provide you with the template, and I highly advise that you try to use the template if you can because it's really handy and everything. They say here to line the outside edge of the cabinet, but that you might have to adjust for a full overlay door, and that's what we've done is we've put on, or we will be putting on, full overlay doors. And it's just so that really what you want is to make sure that the chrome, or the whatever ones you use, wooden or chrome, that the Lazy Susan tray can spin clear and not hook or hit, you know, the inside face frames. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've made my own template out of some scrap hardboard that I have, and all I did is at the corners I notched a 90-degree notch into the template thing so that I can do my own. And then the way that that's going to help me is easier than trying to stick this piece of paper up in the top of the cabinet. I've got to make sure that the devices that I screw into the base of the cabinet and to the top of the cabinet are really plumb with respect to one another. If they're off a little bit, the thing is going to spin crooked, and we don't want that. So what I've done is I just create my own template, and this 90-degree notch fits nicely on just the barely perceptible lip that I have here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make markings on this through which then I can put some screw holes. And then once I'm done with that on the bottom, I can go ahead and flip that so that I can put that right on the top, and I can even get a little clamp in there, and then I can just drill holes, and I'll know that those holes are exactly aligned with the ones that I've made on the bottom. So what I'll do is leave that template there. I'm going to grab one of the larger Lazy Susan trays, and it's actually pretty heavy because this is a pretty large, this is the 32-inch version, so it's a pretty large tray. So let me grab that while I'm off camera. You can amuse yourselves by making fun of me. Okay, so then I just want to make sure that I can get it in there. Make sure that the template stays aligned with the edge of the cabinet. And then I want to position this thing in a way that it's going to allow it to turn. And I think that that's an okay position there. I might even move it back a little bit. You know, again, remember we have this extra space on here because it was just too small to really deal with. I mean, I've seen some really clever ways to do this. You can put a knife drawer in here or whatever, but we're not going to do that. We just decided to leave it open, and I'm going to put a little kick plate here so that whatever gets stacked in here isn't going to interfere with the Lazy Susan. So I think this is about as good a position as I need. It's back far enough. It's not going to interfere with the overlay doors that we're going to put on there. And I'm just going to take the Sharpie marker that I always carry with me. I think as you get older, your eyes get a little bit worse, so you need to do that. And I'm just going to make a hole on the, or not a hole, I'm going to make a circular marking through the center post here onto this template. So I do that because I know that the rod that comes with it is going to be right around in that same spot, or exactly in that same spot. So now that I've done that, I can remove the tray and set that here. And now I have the mark that I need. So with this system, essentially what you have is you have the outer rod, an inner rod which is adjustable, and you'll lock that in using a set screw. And then you've got the two wheel bearings which basically go underneath and they'll turn. So when the Lazy Susan turns, these wheels will help it turn, and actually there's a divot on each side. It's very hard to see, so I'm not going to show it to you, but there's a divot on each side so that as the Lazy Susan makes a complete revolution, it kind of falls back into this resting divot to keep it from moving, you know, when you're when it's in its resting position, so it stays the way it was when it was initially set. So one of the things that you have to do is make sure that this set screw and the set screw for this guy is accessible. So it should be basically pointing straight out to the cabinet. So now what I'm going to do is take this gizmo and align it right over that hole so that it's centered, and that now it might be tempting to put the set screw facing this way, but then your Lazy Susan is going to be kind of cockeyed when it sits in its resting position. So even though it's a little off of center, we're not quite in the center of the where the two face frames meet. We're not quite in this corner. We're not aligned with it. That's okay, because we're just going to make sure that that thing points straight out and it's aligned. And then what I can do is, wherever my marker went again, there are four, you can see on this other one, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 holes in the back, and that's what's going to be mounted to the cabinet floor. So all I'm going to do right now is just mark those things with the Sharpie marker so that I know where the holes that need to be drilled are. Okay, so now that I have those marked, I know exactly where the screws on the bottom can go. However, I need this top piece also in place. So I'm going to very quickly just kind of eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exactly 100% perfect. We can make it really, really good. You just kind of eyeball it, and I'm going to again make my 4 marks here. And this is a slightly smaller piece that's going to hold the rod in place when it's up on the upper part of the cabinet. So let me put that down here. And I'm making it perfectly inside the 4 dots that I just made. And I'm going to make 4 new dots. Actually, we'll make 4 circles. Okay, and then those will be the holes that are now drilled for the inner smaller mounting plate that's going to go up against there. So let me drill these holes through here into the bottom. Like so. And they say you need an 1/8 inch drill bit, and I'm going to grab a piece of tape. I'll be right back, because I like to put a piece of tape on there so I don't poke through. Although in this cabinet it doesn't matter, because nobody's going to see the underside of the bottom and up here once the countertop is on. Okay, now I have just a little piece of tape around the drill bit, and it just acts as a depth gauge. Again, not really needed, but it's just a habit I'm into, so I want to keep those habits up. So I'm going to just drill these 4 outside holes out to take this rotating gizmo on the bottom. Alright, now that I have that done, I'm going to mount this using the screws that they have here. And they're just 4 screws that go in there. And we're going to test this too after the first one is installed, just to make sure that it's installed properly and in case we don't have to move it and everything. I've tightened 2 of the 4 screws down, and I'm going to set this in one more time and just make sure that we are all firing on all cylinders here properly. I just need the one, I don't need the inside rod just now. Okay, so you can see there that's not quite where I like it, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. And that's okay. Sometimes it takes a couple times for this to get right, but I want it really rotated about, 3 degrees or something like that so that I can get it back like this in its resting position. So it's just got to rotate a hair to the one direction. Okay, I now have it in a place where I like it, so I'm just going to drill again, now with this thing in the place, and we'll put the rest of the screws in, and the base will be mounted to the floor. Now that I have the bottom positioner in place, I'm simply going to take the the template that we made, and I'm just going to lift that up and hold it like this. I've already drilled out the other 4 holes so that I know where they're supposed to go. I drilled the first hole, and now what I'm going to do is just put this in the first hole so that it will be there, and then I just want to double check the alignment of the post one last time before we put all the rest of the holes in. Got the post. I'm just going to attach the set screw and get it set just to double check it. And I think that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and drill out the rest of the holes and then set that in place. Okay, now that I've got the bottom positioner in place, and I've also screwed in the pivot holder at the top, which is going to seat this beveled post here to hold everything in place once everything is locked in with the set screw. It's now time to just go ahead and set the Susan carousels in there. So I put one in already. I just set it in on the bottom. What I'm going to do is, because this is a little tight in here, I'm going to set the top one in right on top of it, because otherwise it becomes a little difficult to get in there. And what I've got to do is set the post. Then I've got to take this, once I've got the post through the top one, I've got to go ahead and take this other positioner, which is going to help the top one rotate. And as I lift that up, I go ahead and set that in. Of course, that's a lesson just to check the set screws and make sure they're not poking their way too far into the metal. Should do that for the bottom one as well, just to make sure. Okay, and we'll lift that hole assembly up, and we'll get it on it. And while I have this in the box, I know it looks a little complicated, but you got to just kind of work with it a little. I'm going to lift this top carousel up and just anchor it temporarily with the screwdriver. Like so. There we go. So it's just anchored so that I can get at it and work with it. Okay. You guys didn't tell me that I forgot this first. Okay, then you insert that piece. Alright, now they're all in. I can essentially raise that. It's tough to see from the camera angle, but I'm raising that beveled piece just to lock in, and then I'm going to take the set screw that's here and lock that into place. And I can also lock the bottom one now because it's set. Okay, so the bottom one is set. Now all I have to do is set the top, and I can do that by lifting and just making sure that, and of course, what did they say? Make sure it faces the front, right? Okay. Now what I can do is just adjust as I please. So you can see how the bottom one kind of lays in there really nicely, and it's got its resting position perfectly. So I'm just going to fiddle with the top one and rotate it and get it to the height that I want. And that pretty much does it. It's not a tricky installation. You've just got to make sure you get a couple of things right, namely the bottom positioner being mounted on the floor of the cabinet, and this upper one here has to be exactly aligned with one another. And I do that, using this cutout template that I can just drill down and then push it up and drill up. It makes it much easier to do, I think, than dealing with a little piece of paper, but obviously you're welcome to do whatever you please. And then you just set the post in there and adjust these things as they go. And I like this one because, it turns itself. It turns separately from the other ones. And you can see there it just has a couple of resting positions. You'll see it bump up and then down like so. And that's it. So our Lazy Susan cabinet is complete. We'll sand these down once the glue sets up a little bit better, and then we'll put a coat of stain and a couple coats of urethane on it, and this cabinet will be ready for install. In any case, check out our blog. I often write about some of the stuff that we do in the videos and explain it a little more. Go ahead and post whatever questions you have. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And the next cabinet that we're going to start on is the last cabinet that we have to do, and that is the sink base. That should be a pretty straightforward cabinet. There's no tricks, there's no real hardware other than some doors and a pull-out shelving system. So a lot of the same techniques you'll see reinforced in that cabinet. There may be one or two different things that we're going to try, but inevitably this is ready to go in, and I look forward to seeing you around the next time. Thanks again.